Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Kopi Chats with me, Waylene. In lieu of Kopi today, I have tea. I've got a bit of sinus problem, so tea it is for me today. I hope that wherever you are, anywhere in the big wide world, you can have coffee or any other drink that you enjoy. All right, today we're gonna have more Ukraine and also, perhaps surprisingly enough, other topics as well. So let me show you what I got. Starting this off today, published just let's see, earlier today. Cryptocurrency fundraising is a criminal offense in China under new legal interpretation from the Supreme Court. So some people have been sentenced to jail for raising money through cryptocurrency. Could put a person who raised 8 million US dollars in cryptocurrency in prison for more than 10 years for raising money. That's really harsh. Cryptocurrency fundraising is now a criminal offense in China. The country's top court said a new interpretation of national law. Penalties could depend in part on the value of the amount raised. Look at that. If it exceeds 100,000 yuan, is categorized as a large amount. If it involves an extremely huge amount of 50 million yuan, a loss of at least 25 million yuan, or involve 5,000 people, is extremely serious and could result in more than 10 years in prison. So fundraising by any other name is not off the hook either. Online lending and financial leases considered to be fundraising could be charged with the illegal absorption of public savings. Wow. So that is pretty harsh. Fresh legal interpretation, scheduled to take effect next month, is aimed at punishing illegal fundraising crimes in accordance with the law and maintaining national financial security and stability. Part of China's efforts to root out financial scams and money laundering. In 2013, the government banned Chinese banks from dealing in Bitcoin, and also banned all forms of raising capital through the issuance of digital tokens, which would essentially be the issuance of new cryptocurrency. So Bitcoin being one of them. Nowadays, I guess there are hundreds of such cryptocurrencies, but to issue a new one is illegal in China. So, what does this mean for the world? Well, now that the Chinese courts have declared, even raising money with cryptocurrencies is illegal, I think it's just a furtherance of existing rules that already were in place. It seems like a further clarification rather than new rules that were unexpected. I guess you could say that this has been expected for some time now. Now, China's always been seen as a leader in cryptocurrency adoption, even after their banning of Bitcoin. And check it out here. China's digital currency racks up a couple million yuan of payments per day at the Beijing Winter Olympics. So Olympic athletes were free to use the digital yuan through their smartphones and wearable devices. See, China's sovereign digital currency, known as the yuan, I believe, is catching international attention, with a couple of million worth of payments being made each day during the Olympics. China's leading a race among major economies to launch a digital currency and has rolled out pilot schemes in at least 10 cities across the country. And this is the first time that foreigners were free to use the yuan. No breakdown of usage was given, but it seems that foreigners prefer to using hardware wallets, which I reckon is like a USB token or some sort of dongle, a key fob. So you can see that it's plain to see that China is taking it quite seriously and forging ahead, with tests in nearly a dozen cities, 10 cities, and at the Olympics, pretty big deal. Pretty big deal. And this is not something, it's not an isolated happening. It's happening everywhere, right? All different countries are starting to take notice of these, what they're now calling central bank digital currencies rather than, say, cryptocurrencies. I think they're now. I think now I'm not entirely sure about this, but my understanding is that these digital currencies are not cryptographic in nature, meaning that it is different from Bitcoin because the supply of Bitcoin is entirely limited by the technology. You can't create more Bitcoin at will whenever you choose to. And that applies to most of the cryptocurrencies. I don't know, it might be all of cryptocurrencies traded online right now. But with these central bank digital currencies, it's my understanding that the government will have control of it, right? So if you buy something or sell something, it is the government's responsibility to track the movement of the money. So it'll know that, oh, you have paid, say, the grocery store, 7-Eleven, for Coca-Cola, and they will effect that transaction for you. They will keep track of the balances on all sides. And can they create money as a result? Yes, they can. Of course they can. They could put, lots of money, like $100 into everybody's digital wallets, and that would be trivial. It might not be a good idea, but they could do that. No, there would be no obstacle to that. Okay, moving on. Now, do you remember, as I do, that Facebook had a cryptocurrency project? They started off calling it Libra, and later on rebranded as Diem, as you can see in the photo. But it's finally shutting down following scrutiny from financial regulators. The United States Senate, I believe, called Facebook to present their case to the Senate, before they would give the green light for it to be implemented. You can see here Stuart Levy, the DM CEO, blamed US regulators for shutting down the project. He says, despite giving us positive substantive feedback on the design of the network, it nevertheless became clear from our dialogue that the project could not move ahead. Regulatory concerns. Facebook's crypto project raised concerns among global finance officials and regulators. Many raised concerns about DM's security and reliability, with regulators arguing that the service could enable crime, including money laundering and harming user privacy. And that is the same criticism that we've heard with Bitcoin, or any other cryptocurrency for that matter. Could enable crime, including money laundering and harming user privacy, of course. Oh no, maybe not harming user privacy, because harming user privacy would imply that there's information known about users, and that would not necessarily be the case for Bitcoin, but would certainly be the case if it's a Facebook cryptocurrency. I reckon that the currency would be tied to the user's ID on Facebook. So this is not new criticism, and I don't think that it's unsolvable. I mean, you could, if you just simply think about it, is there a way to prevent user information from being leaked? Yes, you could. You could make it that the cryptocurrency wallet is not tied to a Facebook profile. Now, Facebook could very well do that. They might be reluctant to, but they could. And could it be, could anything at all be used for crime? Yes, anything at all. I mean, paper money could be used for crime. Bank transfers are used for crime. Shell companies and offshore bank accounts are used for crime. So it's not really a remarkable criticism. This feels more like a political issue. See, it says here, last year, some US lawmakers said Facebook could not be trusted to manage cryptocurrency and urged the company to discontinue the test immediately. I think that might be very well be the right instinct. Why would you trust Facebook to manage cryptocurrency? However, that doesn't mean that the criticism, was solid. Doesn't mean that we accept the reasons, right? Yeah, look at this here. The combination of a stablecoin issuer or wallet provider and a commercial firm could lead to an excessive concentration of economic power. Yes, definitely, Facebook is a monopoly of sorts, and to combine that with uh, an e-wallet, being an e-wallet provider, it definitely gives them a huge advantage. Now, if you just think for a moment, oh, are there any such companies out there? Let me think while I have a sip of my tea. Oh, I don't know, maybe Grab or Gojek. Right? If you're in Southeast Asia, you know Grab and Gojek. You probably use it to pay for things very often, to order food, to pay for your rides, ride hailing. So, is this any different? No, not really, except that this is the United States and Facebook is much bigger. But clearly, such a thing, is kind of moving forward. Certainly, Gojek and Grab, they don't use cryptocurrencies, but they are processing payments. And they have all the information they could possibly want about how their customers spend their money. I'm one of their customers, so I use both of those, in fact. So I already gave them my information, right, for the services that they provide. So I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say that this is a terrible thing. No, it's very convenient. Love it or loathe it, I don't think it's avoidable, right? Okay, so what else? I think that's about it. Let's just move on, yeah? So, see here. So that's the context. Facebook wants to create a new digital cryptocurrency. They were stopped, but now central banks are stepping into that gap, to do digital currencies that people, allow their citizens to pay with their phones and whatever tokens that they need to carry, and it's all moving forward. Even as far back as last year, April, the Wall Street Journal was reporting on the success of China creating its own digital currency, which was a first for a major economy. Blah, blah, blah. Let's have a quick look because I think that this article has a lot going for it. Cryptos such as Bitcoin have foreshadowed the potential digital future for money, although they exist outside the traditional global financial system. Yes, yes, yes. China's version of a digital currency is controlled by a central bank, which will issue the new electronic money. See, so where Bitcoin is by its very nature constrained, the supply of Bitcoin is constrained by its very nature, by its very technological nature. You can't get more Bitcoin. Nobody can do that. That's entirely different from what a central bank digital currency can be. So if China decides that we are going to create much more yuan, for the purpose of, say, lowering the value, exchange rate of yuan, they can do so. If the government decided that we're going to support everybody through the pandemic by giving them a lump sum of money, they can do that easily. And it does not have the same advantages that Bitcoin has, or rather, it has some of the weaknesses that traditional money has, which is that we can have inflation, you can have governments knowing what everyone is up to, no lack of privacy. I think we're all okay with the lack of privacy now, but certainly we miss out on the advantage of Bitcoin, which is that, well, you wouldn't be able to get inflation through unlimited printing of money, which would definitely be a worry with central bank digital currency. It is expected to give China's government vast new tools to monitor both its economy and its people. By design, the digital yuan will negate one of Bitcoin's major draws, anonymity for the user. Absolutely. Every single digital wallet will definitely have to be tied to a citizen, right? Because you want to know who is spending that money. That's just like it's rather the same with buying a mobile phone number. I think everywhere around the world now, you can't just buy a mobile phone number, anonymously. You have to, at the point that you buy it, even you can buy it from 7-Eleven, you'd have to from a convenience store, you have to give your ID to get the phone number, which is the case in Singapore, Malaysia, I reckon a lot of places around the world. So it says here Beijing is also positioning the digital yuan for international use. Yes, yes, yes. And we saw start to see the baby steps of that with the Olympics. Let's see. Continuing on. Digitization won't by itself make the yuan a rival for the dollar in bank-to-bank wire transfers. Yes. in its new incarnation, the yuan could gain traction on the margins of the international financial system. Yes, actually, that's a really interesting thing to take note of. Mm, the no, right now when money is transferred between people, in different countries, it typically involves what is called the SWIFT network. When you if you've ever done an international bank transfer, you'll be asked for the SWIFT code of the receiving bank. So if you're initiating transfer, they ask you what's the SWIFT code of that bank. And every bank in the world apparently has a SWIFT code. You key in the SWIFT code of the recipient bank, give the account number of the recipient, and then like personal details like the name and so on, and address maybe. Then your bank will know who to send it to, and that SWIFT network, of course, is I think would be run in the United States. Maybe I'm not sure if it's a private organization or government organization, but it cannot get around. This information cannot avoid, I think, being routed through entities residing in the United States, domiciled in the United States. So this is a bit of a problem for foreign, any other country in the world, not the United States, that wants to keep its financial system independent. They don't want to have funds transfers disrupted because the United States says so. And the digital yuan would help with that. Let's see. And China has indicated that digital yuan will circulate alongside bills and coins. Yes. Some people say that Beijing aims to digitize all of its money, and Beijing hasn't addressed that. I think you can perfectly well assume a wait and see attitude. You don't really know how it will go. Maybe people will still want to use paper money. It says here, digitized money looks like a potential macroeconomic dream tool for the issuing government. Certainly, because you have full control over every single dollar. Usable to track people spending in real time, speed relief to disaster victims, or flag criminal activity. With it, yes, Beijing stands to gain vast new powers to tighten Xi Jinping's authoritarian. Yes. The money itself is programmable. The Beijing has tested expiration dates to encourage users to spend quickly for times when the economy needs a jumpstart. And that is definitely one of the drawbacks, and which I think I've mentioned very briefly already, that the bank can control the value of it. They can give you more, or in this case, they could set an expiry date on what you have, so that they can encourage more movement or less movement of the money. Yeah. Now it's definitely going to be trackable. Of course, every transaction will be noted in a central database. What else? Anything else? Yes, let's look at this here. In 2019, Facebook said it would pursue its own cryptocurrency. The realization this could circulate in the user base far bigger than any national population brought immediate recognition that technology could upend traditional currencies. So US regulators focused on stopping Facebook, ultimately succeeding. China accelerated its pursuit of a digital yuan, launching trials in April 2020. So I think this reflects the macro view that I wanted to share. That is, it seems that a lot of countries are just really, really keen on pursuing their own digital currencies. And by my reckoning, it'll all be very similar to what China is doing. That is, central banks will have control over digital currencies. It will not be a cryptographic currency. They will be able to print money as and when they please, which is not possible with Bitcoin, which is of course the central attraction of Bitcoin. But nobody else, of course, is banning Bitcoin right now. Let's see. Okay, I think this is it. Those are the most important parts. Now, to show to you that other countries are also participating in this, experiments with cryptocurrencies here. Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, and South Africa launch central bank digital currency scheme. Central banks in Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, and South Africa will conduct cross-border payment trial using different central bank digital currencies to assess if these allows transactions to be settled more cheaply and easily. So interesting. It's pretty interesting in my opinion. I think you'd agree. All these different central banks coming together, putting their digital currencies out there, exchangeable with each other. the initiative will explore different technical governance and operating designs. Should publish its results in early 2022. I haven't heard about the results being published, so maybe it's still ongoing. So I think that pretty much covers it. That is, central bank digital currencies appear to be here to stay for the long term. I think it's definitely got too much momentum now. I also read separately, and that was there's this suggestion. So I don't have a respectable news site to show for that. It just seems like some tweets, saying that there are officials from international banks, international organizations saying that you could have these central bank digital currency to be programmable, and yes, of even China's. It seems like the articles talking about China have acknowledged that these would be programmable. You could, for instance, make it such that this cannot be used to buy McDonald's. You could get welfare payments that could not be used to buy McDonald's. You can only buy groceries. You could make it such that you could not buy. Let's say if you're under 18, you couldn't buy alcohol, and so on. So it's very powerful, but also if you are a privacy advocate, you might say, okay, that sounds very concerning, and yes, I guess that would be entirely true, but I think that is without a doubt the way that the world's going. I don't know that we can do anything about it, only that we should know about it. Yeah, if if an opportunity comes up where individually we have the chance to do something to opt in or opt out of these changes coming our way, well, we should at least know what the trends are. Okay, moving on. I have in totally different news. Chinese hot pot chain Hai Di Lao in hot water. Ha ha ha. For keeping files on customer eating habits and physical appearance. So this is pretty absurd, and there's not much to say aside from that. So when you go to a Hai Di Lao hot pot restaurant, the waiter or waitress may be taking notes about whether you have long hair or short hair, if you are fat or skinny, and what your favorite foods are. So this is a woman posted online saying, okay, the restaurant was keeping secret files on her, and she was stunned to learn that many others had a similar experience. And it's rather amusing, but to be honest, this seems like a whole making a mountain out of a molehill. And even as I share this, I know it's just funny. I don't really take it that seriously. Okay, and let me tell you why. Because if you go to a restaurant regularly, and the head chef or the head waiter remembers who you are, knows what you like, takes note and recognizes you, right? Because you have your face looks a certain way, your body's certain shape. Is that keeping secret files on you? Because those files are absolutely secret. They are in the head waiter's brain. They can't be you can't take them out, and they're collecting all that information about you. Is that a absolutely terrible thing? If that's not, then is that very, very is that different in a meaningful way from recording on an iPad, so that all the waiters and waitresses can access that information to know what you prefer and recognize you when you step into the restaurant? I don't really know. I don't know if that's really that different, right? so it's more interesting perhaps to think about that we are very nervous about our privacy being pulled back, bit by bit, even in your restaurants. It feels that way, but it doesn't seem to be any different from what is really happening in the world, and least of all in China. Come on, where you have digital currencies that are giving the government information about everything that you spend money on. Okay, moving on. In Singapore, we have a very unusual way for people to show how fed up they are, with the coronavirus pandemic. So some people have, and I've seen this. I felt myself feeling this way as well on occasion. Oh, just let me have it, and get it over with, please, because I'm tired of all this, caution and anxiety. Just get over with. And that seems to be, shifting views of the virus in Singapore, which is prompting experts to warn against actively seeking out infection. So rather than, go out and protest, driving your trucks in the streets, like in Canada, no, people go online, they'll just complain that, oh, I've had it, when am I going to get this virus? Maybe I should just get it and be done with it. And that's about it. That's all that there is to be said about this. that's just the a characteristic of Singapore. I don't know what it's like, where you are, but this is certainly a thing that you would see in Singapore, and I think it's quite unique. All right, moving on. Opinion piece on the South China Morning Post by a lady called Maria Xiao says, "Don't ban pro-China propaganda, but allow anti-Asian hate." That is, the wrong thing. So it is wrong for Twitter to suspend suspected state-sponsored accounts spreading pro-Chinese propaganda during the Winter Olympics. Yes. Twitter suspended those pro-Chinese propaganda accounts. But they allow, accounts that spread anti-Asian hate to remain. So you can't do that. Twitter, that is hypocritical. See, it begins here. It is well and good that Twitter recently suspended hundreds of suspected state-sponsored accounts used to spread pro-China propaganda during the Beijing Winter Olympics. But what about taking action when groups and individuals incite hatred by putting out information already proven to be outright fabrications, such as one that suggested the torture of ethnic Uyghurs by Chinese police? I'm just going to stop here. So Maria is equating, two different things. One is government propaganda, and the other one is shall we say, discredited fake videos that incite racism. All right. One is and I think that they're rather different. I think they're rather different, Maria. I don't think they're the same at all. Because one is, state level, big bureaucracy, organized propaganda. And I think that should be stopped. We should halt that. And then the other one is just fake news. Right, fake news. And you could say that, oh yeah, people watch this and they'll get angry at Chinese people because Chinese people are doing the bad things. But by that reasoning, we have to take down all videos where there's a victim and a perpetrator, any kind. Because if you see a video, with a person of, let's say, I'm going to use nationalities in place of ethnicity, all right? So let's say a Burmese person beating up a Thai person. Would you say that, true or not, we got to take this off the internet because, it will fuel this anti-Burmese sentiment? I know, that sounds pretty absurd. You couldn't show videos of anything happening to anybody. That feels pretty absurd. Whereas in the case of the pro-Chinese Winter Olympics accounts, that's it's entirely different, right? It is a large organization making use of Twitter to shape public opinion, right? Nobody's even claiming that in the latter case, showing Uyghur people getting beaten up. Nobody's even claiming that it's an organized, large-scale, manipulation campaign. So I don't know how this article passes muster, and I've browsed it, I've skimmed it, and I don't think that it's I don't think the master's degree in international relations helps you to compare things adequately, because I don't think these things are comparable at all. Okay, moving on. Finally, we get to the big news of the day. President Joe Biden unveils sanctions on Russian businesses after the premeditated Ukraine attack. So what does Big Joe have to say? Joe Biden hit Russia with a wave of sanctions on Thursday after Moscow invaded Ukraine, measures that impede Russia's ability to do business in major currencies, along with sanctions against banks and state-owned enterprises. Now, it sounds like a big deal, right? Sounds like really heavy-hitting major sanctions. During White House remarks and answers to questions, Biden described Russian President Vladimir Putin as an aggressor with a sinister vision of the world and a misguided dream of recreating the Soviet Union. Well, it's all very, emotive language. Very, very emotive. But he held back for now from imposing sanctions on Putin himself and from disconnecting Russia from the SWIFT international banking system. Really? Doesn't that make you wonder why? So if this like really awful person, like is trying to recreate a medieval dream of Europe, this backwards, barbaric person. Oh, but I can't sanction you. I'm not going to sanction you, Mr. Putin. And, oh yeah, please continue to use the international banking system, which I had mentioned briefly in the earlier topic about crypto, saying that, this digital currencies, central bank digital currencies, would be able to bypass the SWIFT system because you wouldn't need it, right? If the person you're sending money to has a e-wallet software downloaded on your iPhone, even if they're, in a different country than you, they can receive the money, right? They can receive the money. So that would make this obsolete, and it would make China a little more resilient to any sanctions, relating to the international banking system. And now Russia can also continue to use it despite, deliberately, conducting a premeditated attack with what is these to fulfill a sinister vision of the world. I don't know, what Mr. Biden's thinking about this, because, on the one hand, he has this, very harsh criticism for Mr. Putin, and on the other hand, he has these sanctions that are pulled back from the most important person, the most important target here in this issue, which is Mr. Putin himself. Biden said there's now a complete rupture in U.S.-Russia relations if Moscow continues on the path it is on. Wow. So conducting the attack was not sufficient. You have to also continue on it. And then I would wonder, okay, but Mr. Biden, I think it's necessary to explain that if it continues 1 week more, is that okay? Or would he have to continue, 2 weeks before more sanctions would be applied? Is 2 weeks the cutoff point? Or, or 1 week? Or is it a month? Right? Before that complete rupture would take place. I think you should explain. Yeah. Look at him. This is his comment. This is a premeditated attack. Putin's aggressor. Putin chose his war. And now he and his country will bear the consequences. Apparently not. That's not totally correct, because Mr. Putin himself will not be subjected to sanctions. That's too bad. Okay, so the steps, sanctions include targeting 5 major Russian banks. 5 banks, and as well as members of the Russian elite and their families. Right, so some banks, some families. Do we know which ones? Do they even, do business with the United States? The sanction aims at limiting Russia's ability to do business in dollars, euros, pounds, and yen. Wow. Okay, that sounds pretty serious, because a lot of world business is conducted in dollars, euros, pounds, and yen, right? White House also announced sweeping export restrictions against Russia aimed at restricting access to global exports for everything from commercial electronics and computers to semiconductors and aircraft parts. That sounds really serious. It says this is a dangerous moment for all of Europe. Yes. So, it is the same thing, the same tone is reported here at the South China Morning Post. With Joe Biden saying Putin chose this war and outlining plans, against Russian assets. Washington will freeze all Russian assets in the U.S. Oh, that's a new one. I didn't see that earlier. Sanction the Russian president and oligarchs who back him. Oh, that seems like a contradiction. So it's not loaded. Never mind. We'll skip that. So it sounds like Joe Biden Joe Biden places a great deal of faith in the sanctions taking effect, having a impact. Let's see. What did he say about it before? On February 11th, which is about, 2 weeks ago, Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, said that the president believes that sanctions are intended to deter. I see. And today, POTUS told us no one expected the sanctions to prevent anything from happening. Wait a minute. Is that for real? Who is this Michael D. Shear? White House correspondent for the New York Times. Ooh. Wow. And he's he's an anti-Trump author, right? Because you can see here he wrote a book, Border Wars, Inside Trump's Assault on Immigration. So he's no fan of Trump. He's not saying this to hurt Biden and support Trump. He's just pointing out something that he saw. And then on a separate account, I found this short clip.
No one expected the sanctions to prevent anything from happening.
The purpose of the sanctions has always been and continues to be deterrence.
No one expected the sanctions to prevent anything from happening.
Wow, did you hear that? I'll bet you did.
Purpose of the sanctions has always been and continues to be deterrence.
So, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? So 2 weeks ago, the National Security Advisor to Joe Biden says, yes, it is to deter. And his own vice president says, yes, it is to deter. And the president goes in front of the TV and says, no one expected a sanction to prevent anything. What? What's going on? Per Reuters, as reported on Reuters, this is their correspondent, Phil Stewart. The Biden administration is not expected to target Russia's crude oil and refined fuel sector with sanctions cutting off trade due to concerns about inflation and harm it could do to its European allies, global oil markets, and U.S. consumers. Wow. This is a big deal because you may know that Germany buys Russia's oil and gas, and any sanctions on the Russian oil and gas sector could result in big changes in prices, global oil and gas prices, which would affect inflation domestically in the United States as well as in Europe, in global oil markets. So, do you think that the sanctions that Joe Biden announced will ultimately prove effective? If everybody's gonna if they impose the sanctions, what happens? Well, then prices go up. And then what happens to Russia's oil, which is still being produced? Well, they would sell elsewhere and it would fetch a higher price. Oh, that wouldn't exactly hurt Vladimir Putin, would it? No, it would not. It would not, to be clear. So, Joe Biden seems to have talked himself into a corner. Right? He wants to impose sanctions, but he can't impose sanctions, or it'll hurt really badly. It'll hurt his popularity, his administration, as well as hurt his allies. And so he can pretend that he's going to be really tough on Russia, but it seems like they can't really do that. So, and let's find out just exactly how dependent is Germany on Russian gas. Just to pick an example that we've heard rather frequently. Okay, Russian forces invade Ukraine, blah, blah, blah. Russia supplies more than a third of Europe's gas. That's huge. And let's see. That's not all. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Data for German supply showed that in December 2021, Russian pipeline gas accounted for 32% of German supply. Wow. So a third, Russia supplies a third of Europe's, gas, and also supplies a third of Germany's gas. Is there anything else? Oh, yes. A third of Germany's crude oil came from Russia in 2021. and 53 over half of coal for German power generators and steel makers came from Russia. So once again, can we really, realistically expect Germany or the United States to do, to sanction Russia effectively? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's a realistic expectation. Now, if you think that's getting a little bit too serious, please allow me to share with you what I think might be the most, I think the funniest, most insightful tweet on this tragedy. Greta Thunberg caused this mess. Now, why is this a thing? Well, allow me to explain. Well, maybe if Greta Thunberg wasn't lecturing all of Europe and the United States to clean up the environment, to be more environmentally friendly, maybe the United States would not have cancelled all their fracking and oil pipeline from Alaska and I think it was Alaska, and then yes, well, basically fracking and oil pipeline. And Germany would not have cancelled all their nuclear power plants, which they did very recently. I think it might have been last year, in response to the clamor for more environmentally friendly technologies. So the result of all this was that Germany decommissioned all their nuclear power plants, and the United States, got rid of the stopped an oil pipeline and stopped fracking, making them more reliant on imports of oil and gas. And who benefited from that? Ta-da! Russia. So yes, Greta Thunberg is responsible for Ukraine. Okay, moving on. Now, it seems that a lot of countries are actually taking this very seriously, and Japan's also one of them, imposing sanctions on Russia, restricting chip exports to Russia, and ultimately, I don't think that it will stop anything. Maybe that's just, I don't know if that's being too pessimistic, because maybe part of the story is that it depends on how many countries take action to signal their opposition to what Russia is doing, and Japan taking a stand on this is a positive sign, of course. Let me just show you briefly. There's plenty of updates on Nikkei Asia about what's going on. They have a page dedicated to all the developments. Wheat is going to get really expensive. Chicago wheat, and I understand that Chicago is I think one of the largest commodities trading exchanges in the world, and it soars to the highest since mid-2008. I reckon that is because it's expected that Russian wheat will not be able to be traded easily, so prices rose. Yeah. Now, take a look at this. I had mentioned previously that the Chinese embassy in Ukraine did not evacuate their staff, unlike the American and maybe the German embassies. But now they have chartered planes to fly citizens back to China in batches. States here, deadline to apply for a spot is midnight, 2 days from now. So initially, I thought that was the lack of evacuation signal that they wouldn't see an invasion by Russia. Maybe they knew something that other people didn't know, and it turns out not to be the case. I was wrong about that. Now, moving on. During this time of crisis, Taiwan reports that 9 Chinese aircraft flew past its air defense zone. Taipei responds to the latest entry coming on the day Russia invades Ukraine. And just yesterday, if you watched yesterday's episode, you would have seen that the Chinese Foreign Ministry released a statement that was also tweeted saying that, Taiwan and Ukraine are totally different. they assert their case that there's only one China, and call it one China policy. Excuse me. And then they flew some aircraft over Taiwan. Now that feels very tense. If you are in Asia, if you are one of the countries that is within China's sphere of influence, you would be feeling pretty nervous right now, because many countries in Asia have some kind of relationship with the United States, trying to balance, their security with their economic development, right? So they don't want to be bullied by China, by the People's Liberation Army Navy, but they also don't want to become, dependent on the United States for security. So everybody tries to strike this balance, maintaining your own army and navy, and having some relationship with the United States Navy, to maneuver around what the People's Liberation Army Navy is doing, but also doing business with China. So it's a balancing act. But right now, the balance seems to be all tipping one way, because after U.S. exit of Afghanistan, which was, I think it's plain to say, it was a huge disaster. Now we see Ukraine, where after intensive rhetoric, intensive diplomacy by Joe Biden, Russia went ahead and did what it wanted to do anyway. So this would definitely leave countries in and around Southeast Asia, or throughout the whole of Asia, a lot more nervous than they had to be before that. Now, moving on. I want to show you a little bit of something from Israel. Israelis here are shown protesting in front of the Russian embassy in Tel Aviv. You can see a lot of people waving the Ukrainian flags. Traffic slowed to a crawl as people are protesting. I saw a separate video of people with Russian passports, Israelis with Russian passports, burning their passports. And I think that maybe have been the same protest. Well, I don't have it right now with me. Sorry, I should have prepared it since I mentioned it. But I'll move on and I'll show you something else. Here is a well-known commentator, Dmitry Alperovich, chairman of the Silverado Policy Accelerator and co-founder and former CTO of CrowdStrike, a well-known security company. Now, I think he must be Russian or Ukrainian. Now, he has this to say: Russians are encountering considerably more resistance than they appear to have been expecting. Crimean thrust is the only one that's making substantial progress. I've read loads of tweets on this, and it appears that there are at least 4 points of entry from Russia, for the Russian forces into Ukraine, from the north towards Kiev, and then from the south, beginning from Crimea, which is in the southeast to be exact. But yes, it's a peninsula, and the army's progressing northwards. Then also from the east, and then the northeast. So those are the directions that the Russians are advancing from, and they expect encountering a lot of resistance. In my previous episode, I mentioned that it appeared that there's not much resistance, like the border forces just folded on contact. That was reported by the Russians with Attitude podcast. Of course, to be clear, they stated plainly, and I read it out to say that now this is what the statement from the Russian side is. It doesn't mean that it's exactly the truth, but it appears that the Russian forces did manage to enter. They got close to the cities, and that's where the resistance has been taking place. Airborne attack ended in disaster. I have seen photographs of crashed helicopters, but nobody really knows the real toll. Dmitry here says Ukrainians are taking heavy losses, and it's only the first 24 hours. And yes, it is. It has been only the first 24 hours. Now, why am I highlighting Dmitry? Well, I found out that Dmitry was one of the few, or maybe the only person, I don't know, he's the only one I know who predicted this attack from some time back. Watch this. December 22nd, 2021. Let me read it to you. In the last few weeks, I've become increasingly convinced that the Kremlin has unfortunately made a decision to invade Ukraine later this winter. While it is still possible for Putin to de-escalate, I believe the likelihood is now quite low. Allow me to explain why. And this was in December of last year. What's it? 2 months ago. Why? There are numerous signals that Russia has sent recently that makes me believe invasion is almost certain, as well as a substantial number of reasons for why this is the preferred route for Putin. Signal, the obvious one, the military buildup on Ukraine's borders in the north, east, and south in Crimea. This mobilization is qualitatively and quantitatively different from the past. Oh, I had no idea about that. 75% of Russia's total battalion tactical groups have been moved. I had no idea that it's like such a huge percentage of Russia's battalion tactical groups. I didn't know that was a thing either. Artillery, air defense units, tanks, APCs, bridge laying equipment, mine clearers, armored excavators, engineering equipment, refueling, huge amount of logistics, etc. And he gives an account here to follow called RA Lee 85. Oh, interesting. Maybe I should follow. So he goes on, this is a massive mobilization and a clear preparation for an extensive invasion, not a bluff. You also can't keep all this equipment, troops, and logistics over there forever. R.A. Lee thinks they would have to pull back by summer at the latest. Yeah, it's huge. It's really expensive, right, to move all this equipment. So much of your resources all around. He goes on to say, you don't put it there if you're not expecting to use it. Cyber prep. Since early December, there has been a dramatic increase in cyber intrusions on the Ukraine government and civilian networks from Russia. And Dmitry would know about this since he is the co-founder of CrowdStrike. It's a security company. Cybersecurity, I believe. Yeah. He goes on, as I told David Sanger of the New York Times and Julian Barnes yesterday, the targets are precisely the ones you'd expect to be targeted for intel collection and battlefield preparation ahead of an invasion. Yeah, I can understand that, right? You would hack into the power grid, try to figure out what would it take to take it down, what are the vulnerabilities, how much capacity do they have. Then here's also a very good point. Diplomatic ultimatums. The list of demands that Russia issued last week was a non-starter for the US and NATO allies. It's simply not a serious proposal for the start of negotiations. Again, this is something that I totally had no idea about. Now I freely confess that I'm just an internet commentator. I do my best, but I had no idea. I saw the list of points raised by Moscow, and I thought, this seems like it seems detailed enough and comprehensive enough to be something worth talking about. Now it turns out that Dmitry here felt that no, these are definitely non-starter. In fact, he says it would be likely rejected by Russia itself if it comes to reciprocal steps to not deploy Iskander missiles in Kaliningrad and cruise missiles in Russian Western Territory. He has a quote tweet that says, This is how you know the Kremlin is not really serious about this list of demands. They would never agree to the reciprocal steps they themselves are proposing. So what was some of the steps were things like, I guess not conducting military exercises more than one battalion close to the border, and also something like keeping the 10-kilometer area from the border free of troops or something. And so now I realized that, okay, now I learned that these were totally non-starters. I don't know why, but now that's what Dmitry is saying. Signal, Dmitry goes on, making the list of demands public and making it difficult to climb down from them without losing face is an unprecedented diplomatic step. Yeah. Most of the time, you would not get these demands shown in public. The negotiations would take place privately. There might be some unauthorized leakage of one or two key points, but it would not be very detailed. However, it seemed that the demands or the negotiation points seem to be revealed in full, and Dmitry says that it would be difficult to climb down from them without losing face. So Putin put it out there. He could not back off from it. So it's a signal that you're not serious, because he didn't leave himself, and he didn't leave Joe Biden a way to walk away without losing face. Sorry. Another signal. rejection of multilateral negotiations, and demanding one-to-one U.S.-Russia talks. That's an interesting one. I did not know that they rejected multilateral negotiations and only wanted, one-on-one U.S.-Russia talks. And it would make sense, right? If you're serious about resolving the issue, you would bring all the stakeholders involved, right? The people who have to live with the consequences of the treaty. You want to, get their voices heard. They can support you, boost the numbers of people on your side, so to speak. And so, as both sides, bring on their stakeholders, it would get the group would get larger and larger. But it's all in the interest of pursuing a peaceful resolution. But if you're insisting on one-to-one negotiations, you're excluding the voices of the people who may shift, the calculations, who may influence the way negotiations go, which means it could go in a way that you don't want. So you want to reduce that risk by just excluding them totally. And ultimately, that seems like what happened, right? So, and if the U.S. went ahead with the negotiations with Russia one-on-one, and they came to some kind of agreement with Russia that U.S.'s allies did not like, that drives a rift between the U.S. and her allies. Again, that would be a win for Russia, right? So I can see that now. Yeah, it's really interesting. Another signal, demand for urgency. A real negotiation on the points Russia raised would take years. But it seems that Russia was asking it to be resolved quickly, which is unrealistic, and Russia would know it. So it's another pretext for invasion, because Russia claimed that the U.S. is not serious about their concerns because they're not responding fast enough. But obviously, it would take a long time because the U.S. would have to talk to their partners. It will go to the diplomatic channels, and they have to evaluate it, and they have to go back and forth. Okay, I see that point. I didn't know that there was a countdown timer on these talks. Another signal, rhetorically, things are reaching a boiling point. Diplomatic language is being thrown out the window, and with each day comes a new escalation. That appears to be true. There were some, hints from the U.S. administration that there would be these false flag operations, staged things to make it look like an atrocity was being committed, like there was a bombing on a kindergarten or something. And I do see that escalation did take place. Signal again, the information battlefield is now being prepared for a provocation that can be pinned on Ukraine, US, or NATO, or all three. Yes. And Dmitry also links a short video showing the Russian Defense Minister Shoigu claiming that American PMC, private military contractor, is preparing a provocation using chemical components in Donbass. So it seems that even on the Russian side, they were seeding suggestions of this false flag operation. May or may not have actually taken place, but this information environment, was being saturated with these claims and counterclaims. And Dmitry goes on, and this is a really good threat, in my opinion, because all these points are worth considering when I think about them. If I wouldn't even know to think about to ask these questions, but it feels to me like once you see these for the first time, you can keep them with you. You would know that these are things that you would look out for. What is happening to the information environment? What kinds of demands are being made diplomatically? It's really interesting. Again, Dmitry goes on. Let's talk about the reasons to invade from Putin's perspective. Number one is the fear of shifting military power balance between Kiev and Donbass separatists. Yes. So, Kiev has been fighting the Donbass separatists. What is the Luhansk People's Republic and the Donetsk People's Republic? Is there a military power balance? I suppose that fear of that change taking place is something that is very concerning. It says here, Putin has lost faith that Zelensky has any interest in resolving the issue of Donbass diplomatically, and believes that he needs to forestall a change in the status quo there militarily. Interesting. I didn't know that. So perhaps the Ukrainian government under President Zelensky was making progress towards crushing the rebellion. And so Putin felt that, you know, if that happens, his chance to take advantage of the situation will be gone. There's mention here of someone called Saakashvili. I think that's a Georgian leader. His push to rearm and take over Georgian separatist territories and change the status quo is what triggered the Georgian War in 2008. Similarities today are eerie. Unfortunately, I don't know anything about that. Another reason is real concerns about NATO expansion, and I think you've heard me say that that's true. Dimitri says, we can debate all we want about whether NATO truly represents a threat to Russia, but the most important thing is that the Kremlin does believe NATO poses that threat. So they will act on it. Yeah. And the rest of it is more of the same, and I think it's very, very good reading if you have the time for it. I don't want to go on. I think I have limited time here in this show, so I will just stop here. But I'll put the link in the show notes in the description, so look for it there if you'd like to continue, and follow Dmitry Alperovich on Twitter if you have time, or if you choose Twitter. All right, move on. Allow me to entertain you somewhat. I found this tweet. It's great. Someone named Michael McFall asked on Twitter, so here's the International Relations 101 final exam question. If country X sends soldiers and tanks into country Y without an invitation, what is that called? To which I think the best troll on the internet today replied, that is a very easy question, depending on the country. If it is Russia, then it's definitely an invasion, giving example of Georgia and Ukraine. Right, that's exactly what's happening now. But if it's the United States, then it is a liberation. Examples, Iraq. Oh yeah, that's true. Syria, Libya, Panama, Cuba, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. Wow. Indeed, holy shit. And who was the one asking this question? It was Michael McFall. His profile says that he is a professor without being any more specific about that. I've heard his name before, but I don't know who he is. And that, I think that says everything that needs to be said about this situation. Because Russia is doing something that has been done by the United States before. I think we all remember Iraq, Syria, maybe not so much Libya, Panama, Cuba, Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, or maybe Vietnam a little bit. Yeah. And which takes me to my final thing to show everyone today. You'll enjoy this.
I think it's very sad when Germany makes a massive oil and gas deal with Russia, where you're supposed to be guarding against Russia, and Germany goes out and pays billions and billions of dollars a year to Russia. So we're protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting all of these countries, and then numerous of the countries go out and make a pipeline deal with Russia, where they're paying billions of dollars into the coffers of Russia. So we're supposed to protect you against Russia, but they're paying billions of dollars to Russia, and I think that's very inappropriate. And the former chancellor of Germany is the head of the pipeline company that's supplying the gas. Ultimately, Germany will have almost 70% of their country controlled by Russia with natural gas. So you tell me, is that appropriate? I mean, I've been complaining about this from the time I got in. It should have never been allowed to have happened. But Germany is totally controlled by Russia because they will be getting from 60 to 70% of their energy from Russia.
So you get the point. You don't have to watch the whole thing. This was the thing. I have a vague recollection of this happening very early on in the Trump presidency. Met with NATO leaders, criticized them to their face, at a official function, and this is exactly what happened. And this is exactly relevant to what we saw earlier. That is, Germany's buying all their gas from 30% of their gas, 50% of their coal, 30% of their oil from Russia, and not really putting anything into NATO, and NATO hasn't done a thing in this crisis so far. Now, none of this is an endorsement of Russia. I do not endorse what Vladimir Putin is doing. Of course, yeah, it's a humanitarian disaster, and I don't think there's any excuse for it. But you reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. Right? NATO did not prepare themselves adequately for the possibility that Russia would exploit their position, and Russia did. And Joe Biden showed himself weak with the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and Putin took advantage. With all the sanctions that he can muster up, he cannot muster sanctions on Putin himself, or Putin's oil and gas industry. So it doesn't look like you'll go anywhere, unfortunately. All right, guys, that's what I prepared for you today. I hope it was okay. I know that you're all really interested, because that's why you watched this show, right? I source everything to the best of my ability, take you through the actual material. So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed it. I have to read a lot of stuff to prepare, but I like it. I enjoy it. I hope you do too. And if you do, like button, subscribe, follow. I don't know what it is on YouTube right now. Subscribe, right? That's definitely the one. Subscribe and the bell, yes. Thank you very much for watching once again, and I will see you again possibly tomorrow, definitely on Monday. Take care and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.